All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blige, powered by the United Goalkeeping Alliance. We want you to come in, sit back, and enjoy a podcast all about goalkeeping on the pitch, sideline to sideline, and everything in between. Whether you're a coach, goalkeeper, a parent, we are exploring every corner of the position with honest conversations, pushing the culture of goalkeeping forward and opening up space for the discussions that matter. Kind of talk others shy away from, but booyah! We lean into it. No holds barred. Big thanks to our sponsor, the United Goalkeeping Alliance. We'll share more about the UGKA later in the show, but for now, let's get this party started. Here's Don, Blige, and Eric.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blige. And we have our mentor as well here, started UGKA, Eric Eisenhut. And we have very personally, a very, very special guest, somebody that I had the opportunity of working with at Rutgers, and not only had an outstanding career basically since he got in the game, but helped us win 2 Big East championships at Rutgers, and was an All-American with us. And we've maintained a great relationship through going forward. That's one of the things I've really enjoyed about Jon. He's such a good human being, good person. He always was very gracious in maintaining our friendship and our relationship. So very, very excited to have us talk with Jon Conway. Jon, how are you, man?
Excellent. Thank you, Blige. Thank you for the kind words. It's going to be tough for me to live up to those words, but I'll try my best.
Our topic is what it takes to be number one, and fighting to become number one, and maintaining number one. And one thing I always tell my goalkeepers when I'm training them, I said, you have to work your butt off to become the number one. It's something you have to really, really concentrate on, and you've got to go through your developmental stuff. But I always also say, once you become number one, you got to work twice, 3 times as hard to keep it. And because there's always somebody coming to take your job. And the younger kids don't realize that as much because, they just might be the only goalkeeper. But when they start having somebody else come in on the club team or whatever, now they got to fight for it a little bit. And some of these kids can handle it. And to be honest with you, some of the kids can't handle it. So that's kind of where we're going with it. And
Yep.
Jon has had a wealth of experience and development in this particular subject matter. As a matter of fact, when we talked about getting number one, how to be number one, Jon, you're the first person that came to my mind, because I know we've had a conversation in the past where I was asked you, how did you do it, man? How did you maintain your focus, everything as number 2 to become number 1? So we'll get right at it. And the first thing I wanted to, you were from outside of Philly. And I was looking at your bio a little bit. Actually, some of it I didn't really realize. But you started out with the Lower Merion Gorillas, and you actually won an indoor and outdoor championship with them.
I mean, that sort of set the tone for me with that group. I played on my local club team in Aston, Pennsylvania, and I played half the game in goal, half the game in the field, and the half that I played in goal, the team wasn't very good, so I was getting pelted. I mean, I was just saving whatever I could. Lower Merion, we played against them, and they were just beating the crap out of us, and I had a really good game. I could have been 16-0. I think it was probably 7. But the coach was like, we need this kid on our goal. So I ended up moving over to Lower Merion when I was about 11 or 12 years old. And those guys really set the tone for me, not only, as a group, which we are all still close to this day. We still text each other a couple times a week, that same group of guys checking in, talking sports, talking soccer. So it's amazing. But the coach for that group was a gentleman named Biff Sterla. And, he committed a lot of time volunteering to coach this group, to coach me, take me after practice and help me with my goalkeeping. And that really kind of started the process for me. There was I had another great goalkeeper who actually went to high school with my mom, and that's how I kind of got introduced to him. He was doing a camp store when I was about the same age. Was a guy named Bob Rigby. And for me, Bob Rigby doesn't get talked enough about in goalkeeping, especially in the United States. For me, he was the first and best to do the position in this country. A lot of people have come after him, but for me, he was playing at a level that was far superior than anything that we've seen. He came from a modest background in Ridley Park, Pennsylvania, went to school in Pennsylvania at, I believe it was East Stroudsburg, and then went on to be a professional. So, I had him as my first sort of real introduction to goalkeeping. Then I moved over to Lower Merion with the gentleman named Biff Sturla, who took the time to try and make me better. He wasn't a goalkeeper coach. He was a coach, outfield player coach, and team coach, but he took the time to get me better. And that sort of started the competition, because at that point we were playing and week in, week out in these tournaments, especially up at a small indoor facility in Philadelphia called Woodhaven. And we'd go and win tournaments every weekend. And that sort of winning and expecting to win and knowing how to win started with that group of guys. And that was a big plus for me. The competitive side of things is, I feel like that's first and foremost what you need to have if you really want to get it to the top level, is just an inherent level of competition that you're always
It's interesting, John, how people come into your life and at the seemingly at the right time, and
Yeah.
trigger your desires, your thoughts, your competitiveness, and everything else. And I didn't realize about Bob Rigby that
Yeah,
you worked with him.
Bob, to this day, I got. Well, I don't know if you know this story or not, but Bob, as I said, was one of the first guys I was introduced to, and kind of was around Bob through coming to Rutgers. I had worked for Bob in the summertime at a local camp. My high school coach, who was a good coach for FC Delco and was still involved up until the last couple of years. Mike Gorney, who's a very, very good coach in southeastern Pennsylvania. Anyway, he had this camp that he ran in the summertime. Bob was the goalkeeper coach, and Gordon Banks would come in for a couple of weeks every summer, and I had the ability to work with Gordon as a player, and then I worked for the two of them as a coach assistant with the camps. And just those moments, being around them and hearing them and speaking with them, especially Gordon, and everything that he had been through, it was phenomenal. And Bob, my brain's all over the place right now remembering all these things, but Bob was one of the first ones. I'd have to go and find him every once in a while to start an afternoon session after lunch, and you'd have to go and go into his room and gently kind of remind him, because he was in a deep meditative space. I mean, he was really into yoga and meditation way before that was, a common thing. And he was practicing his meditation. I was just blown away with his ability to stay focused, especially with everything that was going around, the noises, people coming in trying to get him to go out, and he would be so locked into his breathing and his meditation. That was something I took from him as I kind of moved on in my career.
Wow.
But yeah, just little things here and there that you just sort of sparked as I'm thinking back. But yeah, again, that group at Lower Merion was so special, just setting the tone of how to win.
Then you had success with FC Delco, and in high school you were an all-stater, right?
Yeah.
And
high school was like, it was interesting. During that span, I was with Delco for a spell. I picked up an injury my freshman year of high school, I guess, maybe freshman or sophomore. I'd grown, and I had a freak sort of muscle injury that pulled a bone fragment off my hip because everything wasn't calcified yet with my growth. Common. And at that time, I had played a lot of soccer, played a lot of sports, actually played everything, but soccer was the number one. And I played a lot, and in fact, I felt like I was kind of burnt out at that time. So the injury that happened then kind of came at a really, really good time for me. It gave me a chance to kind of reset, be a kid a little bit, and do sort of kid and teenage things, hang out and do that, but still kind of knowing that I had the hunger to play. And so when I got back to healthy, and after a little bit of a hiatus, I was more focused than ever, and was able to drive through and push myself through the rest of high school.
Wow.
It's not kids aren't that fortunate anymore where they can take a pause, and
Yeah.
I think that's a big detriment as well. I mean, one, I was able to play a bunch of sports, between basketball, tennis, lacrosse, golf, all these things that kind of, I saw the transferable skills in all of them, especially basketball, that I thought was value. And I think, even with baseball, tracking the ball and hand-eye coordination and that sort of thing, I think, it's lost nowadays, and it's a shame, because I don't think kids play enough of other sports that really would benefit them.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I see it, and Eric, I know Eric does too. These kids are so locked into one thing now. That's what causes injuries. That's what causes burnout. I know my situation, I never really jumped in goal until I was 25, and nobody ever trained me or anything like that. So, but I was able to figure games out because we always made up games and played games when we were kids.
Yep.
And it was that
Exactly.
all those different things that you did that just develop your athleticism. And then once you figured the game out, you just put your ability in and boom, you can have some fun with it. So yeah. Eric, you want?
Yeah, it's funny, John, because one of the things that you mentioned that first kind of inspired you to continue to play was being competitive, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
the technical abilities, it wasn't your tactical knowledge of the game, it was winning, but you were winning every weekend, like you said, with that team. But the competitiveness is what drove you. And then eventually you started getting into, you talked about your early influences of goalkeeper coaching and education, so to speak. And then you started talking about meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that in the high school ages alone, at that age, to me is really advanced, especially knowing that there's that. I love back then everyone played three sports.
Yep.
That was just, to me, that was common in the 90s, and that now it's not that way. Like everyone kind of goes right to a particular sport, a specific position almost immediately.
That's sort of the detriment of where we are. I've thought a lot about this over the years. The coaches that I had, that I grew up with, weren't paid. They were doing this out of their goodness of their hearts. For a lot of times, they volunteered to do this. They'd spend their weekends with a bunch of kids traveling around playing soccer games. And it's somewhere in that spell between, youth soccer for me and coming out of college, it started to become a lucrative business. And a lot of people have sort of gravitated to soccer because it was a sport that didn't have a real big stronghold in the United States. There was a lot of people coming over, immigrants who followed the game. And now the game is really, it's embedded into the culture a bit more. And it's extremely lucrative, and it's become very expensive for people to participate. And I think that's it's tough. It's tough to get grasped nowadays, because at the end of the day, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble on here, but the percentages of your son or daughter making it all the way to professional are slim if you do the math. I think, what I always concentrated on was, soccer took a lot of things from me, in terms of missing family events, missing weddings, missing social things. But I had the opportunity to take soccer and use it to my advantage, and be able to get, opportunities to go to Rutgers and get a really good education, to travel the world. I've been all over the place with this sport, be able to see and understand cultures that, growing up in Pennsylvania, I mean, at the time I had never left, really the Eastern Seaboard. So like those opportunities to see what goes on in the world. And I mean, shoot, I live in Toronto now. Like, it's crazy that like soccer has given me all those opportunities. But it's also, it's also taken away some stuff, but I've used that other side of things to really gain and further the type of person, the person that I want to be.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I love hearing that story, and I'm really interested in the next chapter of your life because this is where this other gentleman on the podcast becomes an influential figure in your life. So I've been told. You go to Rutgers University, and you got
Yep.
Mr. Paul Blodgett as your coach. You're stepping into a situation where, if I'm not mistaken, Blodge, national championships have been won with in a previous couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. And then Johnny,
Yep.
you're put into the competitive level probably for the first time, I'm assuming, in your life, based on all the success you've had as a high school and as a kid. Now you're put into this competitive environment where, I mean, you're playing at the highest level at that time. What was the transition like? What did you focus on from a development standpoint? And more importantly, you got to give us some good stories, some Blodge stories. You have to give us
For
a good
sure.
Blodge
For
story.
sure.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's interesting, that transition, because Blodge would know as well. I wasn't highly recruited at a high school. In fact, my way of getting to Rutgers was kind of, again, I this always come back when we're going through this conversation. Like, just you mentioned as well, just the chance opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities and pathways that were opened up, and you were able to work your way through it. I mean, the pathway for me to get to Rutgers was, I had two things that happened. Peter Vermees, I mentioned about an injury that I had. So when that injury occurred, one of the suggestions was to increase flexibility, and one way to do it was through karate. So I ended up taking karate, and one of the instructors there was Peter Vermees's brother, who
Get
was
out of here. I didn't know
big
that.
into karate. Yes. So that was an introduction. The second one, which was a little bit more, I think, prominent in this whole thing, was my girlfriend in high school was also a goalkeeper, and played on the women's team. And we had a double header that evening. The coach for the women's team came down to watch her play, ended up seeing me play, and reported back to the staff at Rutgers about it. And that's sort of how that happened. So without those two things, I probably wouldn't have gotten to meet Blodge and be a part of Rutgers. The year before I got there, they'd come off a national final. And I was coming in as, I was an invited walk-on at the end of the day. No scholarship, just an opportunity to come in and get an education and work for a position. And that's what I wanted. I think when I look back at that time, the other schools I was looking at, good schools, smaller sort of situations where, I probably would have been big man on campus looking back, but this gave me an opportunity to go in as a small fish and kind of have to work my way up at a level that was already reached, national championship level. So how was I going to do that? And, the benefit for me, Blodge, and we can go back over this a little bit. I mean, I think the benefit for me was you guys already had a couple goalkeepers that were really good, and I was able to just kind of sit back, and I redshirted my freshman year, which gave me an opportunity to get my feet wet and kind of understand what was going on. Still allowed me to train, still allowed me to figure out what I needed to do, and without the pressure of needing to play that first year at school, that benefited me big time. And I was able to kind of work my way through it and realize, okay, I can do this, and set a plan together of just kind of executing from there, of getting bigger and stronger, getting quicker, becoming a better goalkeeper. And that was sort of my mindset.
Was there a Widow? Was it Widow that was there when you were there?
Widow and Corey was still,
Corey.
Corey Hunter was still hanging around. He had just come back. I think he had another year of eligibility and was still there, but was struggling to get through to recover from what he had, his injuries that he had. But yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. It was fun to be a part of.
You had well, Widow was a big leader, very hardworking, blue collar type of goalkeeper, very competitive. Corey was a sick athlete. I mean, I think
Yep.
I think he was playing basketball and he went up and came down and double compound fractured his leg, some crazy injury like that,
Stress
right?
fracture. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
crazy.
stress fractures, yeah. And
He was a big athlete, so it was fun to be around those two guys.
yeah, it was. Well,
John,
I
how
tell you
many?
what, working with you guys was a lot of fun. I
Was
mean,
it just the three
Yeah.
of you?
And no, there was Brandon Hockman. Remember Brandon Hockman,
yeah,
Balaji?
yes, I do. Now
Shorter
I do.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everyone's short compared to you, sir.
Yeah,
For those that don't know, Mr. Conway, how big are you? 6'6"? 6.
6'5".
Were you that
6'5".
big in college? Like, was that one of your advantages to like when you're against these other
I mean,
4 or
I
5
I had
goalkeepers?
gone to Rutgers at like 6'3" and change and about $1.75, and I left at about 6'5", 205.
What would you say in
Uh,
college started to separate you from the others? Like, did people obviously start graduating and then opportunities became more realistic with the starting position? And what was your competition like getting into that starting role there?
so I knew that after the first year it was going to be more of a competition, with the first year being sort of a wash, and that I wasn't going to be eligible to play. Um, unless they decided to play me, which would have been interesting to oblige, but that's a whole another
Yeah.
story for another day. um, but yeah, I knew coming into the next year I'd have to be ready to play. And again, we talk about opportunity and sort of how things happen and things that come up. I'm pretty sure after that freshman year, I'd gone with a Delco team to the regionals, and I'd performed well at regionals. Is in Buffalo. I performed well at regionals, had come back, and there was a chance. They were trying to set the team to get ready for the U20 World Cup. So there were some national team coaches there, and I think during that spell was my first introduction to that, because I played well and there was a possibility of getting called in, because they were preparing. It was going to be the next fall, the following fall. This was in the summer, so I think that kind of happened. I played well. I got an opportunity, and motivated to the fact that I had been playing well, and there was a chance to go with a national team, which I never had happened before. So when I went back to Rutgers, there was the competition that was going on there, and then the competition of me needing to get better to perform so I could go to this U20 camp.
What did you work on? Like, what we focus here in the UGKA, John. I know we've talked about this, but we focus on 5 elements development: your technical, tactical, psychological balance, your physical capabilities, and your leadership skills. What did you work on to start separating yourself in both situations?
Physically, I started to take a better look at what I was doing. I got into the weight room a little bit more, just because I had come in as skinny as I was and needed to put on some weight. So that was that was a focus. Now I wish that was a problem, but now I can't keep. I got to lose a lot of weight. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just focused in the gym to try and get better there, and focus on what I had going on in the field. Just in terms of getting up the pace of what was going on with the players around me. Didn't feel like I was totally a fish out of water, but I felt like I needed to just get to the speed of the game and recognition a bit better at that time.
How was the competition when you came back? Like when you came back, how was the competition? Because you took the job away from Widow, is that correct?
Yeah, in that spell, so regional tournament, back to Rutgers, and eventually took over at some point there. And I can't remember exactly how. I think it was back and forth for a bit, and then there was the the St. John's penalty shootout, Big East, which led to the Big East final that I ended up playing in. I don't so to go over that, Big East semifinal against St. John's, it ended up going to penalties, and I had a bit of an advantage over Widow in the penalty kick department, in terms of being able to pull off a few more saves. So towards the later parts of that game, I was subbed in on the field, knowing that I'd hang out for a minute or two on the field and then go into goal for the shootout. And that's what happened. I went in, I ended up saving, I think, 2 or 3, and then played in the final the next day, which we ended up losing 1-0. And I had an absolutely horrendous kicking performance that game. I think I blasted about 15 goal kicks into the stands. It was just horrible. That was one thing that I struggled with. Blodge would attest, because we spent a lot of time working on it. I didn't really have to kick the ball far off the ground in high school. We had a kid that would just be able to pound it down the field if we needed to, and then I was able to throw the ball as far as I could kick it, and with more accuracy. So I would just chuck it down the field to somebody, which is something that's not used very much anymore, which is a shame, because I feel like it's not sexy enough. It's not sexy enough. Everybody's got to hit a sidewinder and whatever. And I think my skill set didn't have that. I mean, I knew I could sling a ball 65 yards on a rope to whoever I needed to. So I didn't use that. I didn't need that skill. So something that's used a lot today. Still haven't quite figured out the best way to use it in a lot of cases, but kids are doing it. So I guess somebody says it's the correct thing to do.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Goalkeeper coaches, are you spread too thin? Are you coaching small groups? Are you coaching at a club? Are you coaching private sessions? Are you coaching in college? Are you selling equipment? Are you selling gloves? Are you running your own camps? Are you running your own clinics? Simply put, everybody, goalkeeper coaches have a lot going on, and they need at least 4 to 5 resources to make it work as a goalkeeper coach. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we're here to help all goalkeeper coaches with their development in their goalkeeper coaching careers. For $99 a year, yes, a cup of coffee a month, you will join the United Goalkeeping Alliance as a goalkeeper coach and have the opportunity to collaborate with over 175 goalkeeper coaches worldwide. You'll have an immediate connection into the collegiate game to be able to share your highlight film of your goalkeepers, in addition to the ability to recruit if you are a goalkeeper coach at the collegiate level. You'll have 24/7 online and live support with business ideas, curriculum, and lesson plan support. We will also promote your club, your academy, your equipment, and anything that you do through our social media outlets. Last but not least, and definitely an important variable, all UGKA coaches have the opportunity to earn 50% commissions on all clubs and goalkeepers that they bring in to the United Goalkeeping Alliance. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out to me, proud board member Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance, at the contact information above. Thank you for listening, and back to our episode.
And now back to our episode.
Can I ask you a quick question? I find it really interesting that you came in the semifinal against St. John's for a minute, played the PK shootout, obviously won, and then Blodge, I got to direct this question at you. If I were that starting goalkeeper who didn't start in the final, when Conway comes in the final because he made some good saves in the PK shootout, I'd be in your office livid that I'm not starting in the final. Like what persuaded you to go with Johnny in the final over the other GK who kind of sounds like got you there?
I'm not great at recollecting things like that.
Oh, he is taking the soft way out, John.
No, I'll tell you
oh man, what a win!
It was Bob's fault. It's Bob's
fault. So it was. He made all the decisions. And I basically said, okay, Bob, whatever you want to do. So actually, not to skirt that question, but to come back around, with because was that Widow's junior year? Because didn't you guys fight out again? And he got the job back.
So it kind of flip flopped here and there a little bit. If I remember, I I can't remember if that was my again. Plotch, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
You guys are getting old,
And
man.
And Eric's busting my chops.
It
Eric's
could have
busting
been
my
my.
chops today.
I'm pretty sure it was that was my freshman year.
Yeah.
So he had come back. He was on. Yeah, he had years of eligibility left. So I think we bounced back and forth a decent amount until I hung on to it.
In today's world, that one of you two transfers and gets an NIL deal somewhere else.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we would have all been all over the place. There's no loyalty anymore in this for sure.
Yeah.
It's crazy because John, I can't wait to get into your pro career because hearing the competitiveness at the collegiate level that you had to go through, A, just to get the job, B, just to maintain it, and knowing again, I would have been livid. But if that kid, his motivation must have been sky high too, where you guys are going into the next preseason like, I got to perform here, and you're only getting better and better as a result of that competition. I feel a lot of kids skirt away from that. I do. I think that they don't want to deal with the competitive level. They want their starting position not given to them, but not earned the way you did it. I won't lie to you.
Yeah,
I feel a lot of people are looking for that.
I think there's a big problem today in that kids are expecting to walk in and they're handed the job, and that's not the case. I mean, we can talk a little bit about that. I can transition a little bit to my kind of coaching side of things because at Toronto FC, we drafted a goalkeeper named Alex Bono, who was at Syracuse, very good goalkeeper coming out of Syracuse. And I think he anticipated coming in and playing right away. And knowing my sort of how everything kind of happened for me, kind of where you want to go, I think I had two obligations. One is, do the best for the team and putting the right goalkeeper in goal. And two, helping this kid, Alex Bono, have a career that he wants and is long, not just throw him in, throw him in and hope he can swim. So we took an approach where we wanted to get somewhere around 50 second team games before we kind of got him into the first team sort of setup in a more, in a way where he'd be an option to play. So something that he didn't expect, but at the end of the day, those games gave him an ability to make some mistakes, ability to understand how it's going to be, how much faster it is, understand what he needed to do, and gave him an opportunity to get better so that when we needed him with the first team and when he came in and won the position, he already had that sort of foundation of things from a professional level. So I felt like that worked out really well in his case, because we ended up going on and winning, an MLS Cup, and he had a really good performance through the playoffs. And I think that sort of foundational setup of how to become a pro, what it takes to become a pro, knowing that there's going to be some ups and downs, you got to fight through it, so that when you are put in a first team environment, that you're ready to go and go in, accomplishing what needs to be done on that day. I think kids nowadays just want to go in and play with no competition. And I think it's interesting because two things happen. One, when the competition comes, they kind of putter out and they don't want to be a part of that. They don't know how that is. And two, these kids feel like they always want to be, they're always handed things, they're not really earned anything. And I think that's a big problem today with youth.
I think one of the best things that happened when you and Widow were going at it is that when you did take over for Widow for a stretch there, I remember how broken Widow was. He came in the office and he was breaking down. I mean, it really affected him. And because his father was a goalkeeper coach at Burnley, was it? Okay, over in England, and his father is a great man, but very driven, and like Widow was. So Widow came back and worked extremely hard, and the competition between you guys was, as somebody involved with you both, was wonderful to watch. Watch you guys work together. but try to be the person, to me, I always tell kids this too. I say, you want to have competition because that's what we love as goalkeepers, but you also want to be your best, and you want your training partner or your competitor to be their best. That's the only way you're going to rise and get to the level that you wanted to be. And that's what happened. You guys went at each other in a very respectful way. And but the competition was very, very it was fun to be a part of. I got to be honest with you from a coaching point of view. But and you both excelled. Widow's extremely
Yeah.
successful collegiate coach now. You went on to have a tremendous professional career, coaching career. So it all plays out, and I think that's one thing the kids don't understand. You always just look at something's happening right now. They don't look at the building of it. How can this help me build, and what can I get to, and I'm proud of you both for the success that you've had, and so it was a very, very nice part of my career to work with both of you guys. That's for sure.
Thanks,
Now
brother.
let's say,
That was a
yeah.
time for me.
Now going from I mean, you were two big goalkeeper player of the year twice in the Big East, if I remember, and you were an
Yeah.
All-American. Okay, and an All-American. And as a coach there, Billy Andrecki is the first male All-American I had at Rutgers. Actually, the first All-American I had at Rutgers was Saskia Weber.
Oh
And
yeah.
she trained. She did when they started the women's program at Rutgers. They didn't have yeah, they didn't have a goalkeeper coach for the women's side. So Saskia came over and trained with us for the men's side, and she was. I mean, they were giving her shit. Excuse me, they were giving her crap, and then yep, sorry, and then but she would give it right back. I mean, she was a tough
Yeah.
competitor, but then to have you get the All-American status was a great moment of personal pride. I got to be honest with you, and it kind of launched you into your next part of your career, which is the professional level. And this is where I think it really gets interesting because you
Yeah.
had to sit behind, well, two championship goalkeepers who became number one,
Yeah.
and you fought with them. So I'd like to get into that part of the your development because I think that really will cement what this subject matter is about, is how it became number one and how did you keep it.
Yeah. So, let me add one more little, we talk about pathways and opportunities. Let me add one more in there that kind of got right
Of course.
before the professional run. I had an opportunity through Balaj and Bob at Rutgers to go to Blackburn and train. The coach at the time was Roy Hodgson, he's been around the world coaching, great coach. So I had an opportunity to work with him and work with a goalkeeper at the time by the name of Tim Flowers. He was an England goalkeeper. Again, Blackburn had just come off like a Premier League title like a year before. So the locker room was full of, unbelievable players. And I anticipated just going over and training, with sort of the academy teams or the second team. And I ended up going over and, again, competitive nature in me. I got there and I'm like, okay, like this isn't as bad as I thought. I can handle myself. And then from there, it just kind of grew. And then I was involved in, every one of the first team training sessions from the time I was there, which was unexpected, but really gave me, the confidence knowing that I could do it at that level. Always absorbing sort of what Tim Flowers was doing, how he was moving. He had an uncanny ability to get a hand to every single thing that was put on his net, and something I tried to emulate and figure out how he did. But that sort of opportunity there really, when I came back to Rutgers, led to the sort of All-American sort of opportunity and reward of, training hard. And that was something that a goal that I wanted and really, fought hard to get. And it was a real moment when I learned that, I was an All-American, and I think that was a big accomplishment. And then I had to redirect it at that point to the next thing. And that led to going to San Jose, which was a real interesting time. The first year in San Jose was a real, you go from Rutgers where the facilities are incredible. You have pretty much everything you really need to get better. And I thought, okay, we're going to go to the pros. It'll be just as good or better than what I had. And in fact, it was a lot worse in San Jose. This training facility was 20 minutes from the locker room. You had to change at one place, drive to another, change in the parking lot, because if you didn't want to go back to the locker room afterwards, I mean, there was all these things, but it didn't deter kind of what we were doing, how I was kind of going about it. And at the time, the first year was a goalkeeper named Joe Cannon, who we worked together for a couple of years. We ended up winning MLS Cup in 2001. He was best 11, if not goalkeeper of the year during that spell. After he left, I thought it was going to be my time, because I put the work in. I knew what it was like being a number 2, and I was fighting to be a number 1. I think I put myself in a good position to do that. And that preseason where I was anticipating being the number 1, get to sort of the last preseason game, and I was out for a training session in the morning, getting myself going, and I broke my ankle. And at that point, they were left trying to find a goalkeeper, because I was going to be out for a significant period. And that's when they brought in Pat Onstad, and Pat went on to we ended up winning another MLS Cup. He went on to be an absolute legend in MLS. So, during those two spells, two different things were happening. One, when I first got there, I was chasing the number 1 and trying to get there. And in the process, as you mentioned, Blodge, I always had the mindset of, well, if I'm not playing, whoever is playing better be playing damn good, because if they're not going to play me, this dude better be making saves, keeping us in the game, winning us games, because if not, I'm there to do it, and I want to be doing it. And that was sort of how I went about my work. On a side note, though, you did bring up sort of the dynamic of training with guys, and there's definitely a few guys out there that don't have the same sort of mindset as I did, that were, PG-13, you can say assholes, right? They were assholes, quite frankly, of how they interacted, how they treated, how they would purposely mess up drills, so you can't get the benefit of the rep. And that's just something that you have to deal with as a goalkeeper. And that was something that I had to go through, all knowing that I was not that type of guy who was going to try and, sabotage somebody else to get where I needed to go. That just, you're sabotaging the team. And
I was just going to ask that. Do coaches see through that
sabotaging the
stuff,
team
Joe?
just doesn't make sense to me. Sorry?
Do coaches see through that, though, when that's going on, or no?
I think at the time, maybe. I knew all the tricks by the time I became a coach, so I snuffed that out real quick as soon as I felt any sort of that happening. One thing I took, the All Blacks, who were dominant in rugby for so many years, they had a sort of mantra in their group. Again, PG-13. There's no dickheads, and I don't want any bad apples in my group. I don't care how good you are. I don't care if maybe you were change some things in games, but if I got to work with you and you got to work with the rest of the group intimately, day in, day out for 300 days a year, like I don't need it. And so that was a big thing with me, with sort of in coaching, working with the guys I wanted to work with and getting the most out of them, because it was more fulfilling when we were all pulling in the same direction and all fighting for the goal of being the best team, being the best group, and that made it that much better.
What advice would you give for a kid, John, who's going through that situation in high school where they don't get along with their outside back and they have to, taking your kind of guidance, what would you say to that goalkeeper that we don't get along, but I got to communicate with him and deal with him every day, and he's in the starting 11, as am I can't just
You
take
get
that
more,
personal gripe onto the field because it's going to kill the team's success. Like, what do you say to that person?
you get more bees with honey. So, as much as it pains you and you don't get along with the guy, sometimes you need to pump that guy's tires and get him to make a tackle or two that he wouldn't normally like, that helps you out, that makes a play that kind of, makes your job easier. And when that happens, you kind of feed him a little bit of sort of great job, thank you, blah, 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 whatever it may be. But I always found like those little tidbits, even though, you didn't get along with the guy, if you at least gave some of those and kept the fact that the group is the biggest thing here, the group and the success of the group trumps everything, then that's kind of how I went about it.
Now, I think I asked you this one time because I was really curious because of how things are going for you out in San Jose. I think I asked you, it's like, how did you deal with it? How did you prepare yourself? What did you do to keep yourself in that drive and motivation to eventually become number one?
So I guess in the back of your head, you always got to go, okay, well, like if an opportunity presents itself, I have to be ready. Because, if somebody goes down and you get thrown in, that's your chance to be like, yeah, this is why I've been working hard. This is why I've focused on this, because this is my opportunity. And if I can take advantage of it and take the spot over, then that's better for me. So that's kind of how I approached it, knowing that you never knew when it was going to come, but when it does come, sort of the hard work and opportunity, come together and at the right moment. And that was sort of what I was paying for.
How did your game management skills develop through that? Because when you did get your shot, you had to show your coaches that you were ready. How did you do that in your training sessions and maybe your scrimmages and stuff?
So at the time, Blodge, my mindset was I got to go out and be perfect. I got to go out and do everything perfectly. I got to keep a shutout, blah, blah, blah. Maturity is a very nice thing, because once you go back and look at it, you realize, and when I became a coach, I looked at it a bit more. It's like that sort of pressure kind of inhibited my ability to actually perform. I was so worried about being perfect. And at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect. It's about going out. Whatever's been asked of you in that game is to be successful in whatever's asked of you. Whether it's, collect a few crosses that game, make a few saves, your distribution, whatever it may be for that game, be good at that. And if there's some mistakes, then you come back and adjust and get another opportunity at it. I was so focused because the opportunities come few and far between at that time, that I felt like I needed to be perfect all the time, and that's not necessarily the case. And again, I think that's the benefit now, Lodge. The benefit now is that there's more opportunity for games. At that time, there wasn't a team, there wasn't, an opportunity. I had to scramble to get a few games. My rookie year with the USL, fortunately, they had a local team in the East Bay of the San Jose East Bay area, and I was able to get some games. But I think that was a big one. I think nowadays you just need to go in and do whatever's asked of you. Don't put too much pressure on yourself that you have to be perfect. Concentrate on what you do well, do that well. And if some of the other things that you don't do as well, if you can just get through it and do the job that's asked for those things, then you'll be in good shape.
Awesome.
Jon, I'm always curious on the mental landscape of goalkeepers, not on a day-to-day basis, but more on let's take like every 6 months. And looking at you so far up to your career, you've had two, in my opinion, really big moments when it comes to the psychological balance, a very high and a very low. The high coming back from England, going into Rutgers that year, like your confidence must have been sky high going into camp. It's to play truthfully, the nothing against Rutgers soccer, but comparing it to where you were, the speed of play probably slowed down a little bit, and you were probably playing ahead of some of your teammates, and your confidence must have been sky high compared to when you break your ankle in the last preseason game as you're the MLS starter. Now, 2 days after that injury, you're sitting on the sideline. You have either a cast on or you're getting ready for surgery. You're out for a while. Like the
Yep.
two psychological highs and lows with those two situations, like it's hard to prepare for that. And how do you prepare a kid knowing that you're going to have an awesome high, you're going to have an awesome low? How do you tell them to just maintain the equal balance of that psychological balance? Because it's a huge part of goalkeeping.
Yeah, I mean, it was extremely difficult. I just felt like at that time, quite honestly, I felt like, something was acting against me maliciously, because I picked up this injury at such a critical moment. It was a tough spell, but I didn't have much time. Fortunately, I didn't have much time to think about it because I was immediately focused on getting healthy as quick as possible to get back into the mix, because I knew I still had a job to fight for in some regards, because they just brought Pat in. He was coming in and he was still getting his feet wet, and I felt like there was some opportunity there. And then Pat really, after he settled in, had been, well, until he retired, was pretty much really good in the league. So so it made it a little bit difficult. But yeah, it was a tough spell, and I just focused on getting back into training and getting back into the group. Being injured away from the group for extended periods of time is so tough on players. And I think that's one thing as a coach, like the quicker you can get guys kind of into the mix a little bit, whether they're there for partial of the training, whether they're there for, the whole thing, whether they're just collecting balls, whatever it may be, at least they're around the group. And I think it makes a huge difference mentally with guys. And at the time I kind of, I was in a pretty dark place, to be honest with you, with injury and missing opportunities. And it took me a while to kind of figure out what I needed to do to get back. I actually, during that time, ended up seeking, professional help in sports psychology to kind of help me through those moments. Because I just had this cloud kind of lingering around me that I didn't like, and I didn't know how to shake. So, that was another benefit. I didn't have, so much pride at the time to know that I needed help and that I needed to ask for it. So I sought it out, and it helped. It helped ease sort of the sort of stress and darkness around sort of the injury and trying to get back. And again, like I was also fighting the fact that, I was fighting to get back, but also, fighting to get back in the lineup, fighting with Pat for a job, and all at the same time, like the team is just getting better and better. The team is just getting better and better and better. And like now it's like, oh man, that gap is getting bigger because I'm not going to be able to get in there because the team is doing well. The leashes are getting longer with performances, and those things happen. At the end of the day, the benefit to all that was in 3 years, I'd won 2 MLS Cups and been a part of a group of goalkeepers at the time. The league had gone from 12 teams to 10 teams. There was 20 guys with a job. I was one of those 20 guys. I was fortunate enough to have a guy next to me that was a really good guy, and Pat Onstad, a good mentor in a lot of ways, was competitive, and kind of pulled me along with him. I just hope I pushed him, which I'm sure I did in some ways. I pushed him to be better and pushed him to keep getting better and get end up getting a lot of awards. But I felt like I was right there pushing that and felt like I was a part of that. And maybe I fooled myself in thinking I was a part of that, but that sort of mentality was what got me through those times when it was really tough.
I think it's really important what the segment of this conversation that you just talked about, because I see a lot of kids when they get hurt, like broken wrists, torn ACL, and they seem really lost. And I always try to encourage them to understand that injury is part of the position and part of your development as an athlete. You're going to get hurt at some point. I mean, very rarely does any athlete get through the career out getting an injury. So you got to learn how to deal with the injury. You got to learn how to flip it into getting better and stronger and uh, mentally stronger. I think it's really important what you said where you went and sought some help. Um,
Yeah.
on a little side note, my great niece is a pretty good basketball player, and she was getting D1 looks as a sophomore and tore her ACL. And it came back and is now having a phenomenal senior year. But she changed. She was going to go to college into architecture, but because of
Yep.
what she had to deal with mentally in recovering from her injury, she's changed it. She wants to go to sports psychiatry or
How about
psychology.
that?
Yeah. So, there's always a silver lining in there somewhere. And that's what you can't see when you're going through the process. What all these
Yep.
things that happened to you, John, I just see, it makes an awful lot of sense to me how it just kept building you and building you and building you to get your start when you got
Yep.
to Metro Stars / Red Bull, and then how you got into Toronto, the coaching and success you had there. I feel so good for you in the career that you had, not realizing, to be honest with you, so many serious ups and downs than you had. But it just cements in my opinion and feeling about you of your character, your base, making the good decisions, how you were brought up as a kid, having a great family, all those types of things came in developing you to the person that you are today. And I think anybody who reaches a point where you are today in their lives and so on, and having the careers you have, you're just setting yourself up for what's coming next now because all these
Yeah.
experiences you had have put you right where you are now, which is where you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
And it's hard to get that point
Exactly.
across to kids. Huh?
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head, Lodge. I mean, like everybody has this impression that everything sort of is linear or sort of progression and to get to your goals, and there is countless this sort of movement, and
Yeah.
those downs are also there. It's funny, I mentioned about injury that I had in high school that gave me time off. That I was getting burnt out anyway, and that gave me a reset. This injury led me into sort of mentally looking at it differently and seeking sort of some mental help, trying to focus on everything that's going on around me, but stay focused on what's going on the field. So all these things come about when these dips happen, and when the dips happen, you just got to learn from them, and then you explode and hit another sort of level.
Yeah.
At
That's
least
life, isn't
that's
it, man?
how
Yeah,
I
that's
look at
life.
it. How to look at
What?
it that way. Otherwise, you get trapped in the troughs.
Yeah. Now, how did that all set you up for when you went to, I mean, when the thing came around going to the Metro Stars, which turned into Red Bull, how was that mentally for you when that whole thing came to?
So you guys will love this. Got real lucky. My first 6 years in San Jose, we had two coaches. Really, the first year was Lothar Arciender, who only lasted a year, and then from that time it was Frank Yallop, Canadian international, played in England for a number of years, and Dominic Kinnear. So during that spell, we had some success. Frank ended up leaving, taking the Canadian national team job. Dom took over, and I had a great relationship with Dominic Kinnear, and then his assistant coach, John Doyle. John actually got me into coaching in the East Bay, got me a bunch of coaching gigs. So I had a great relationship with these guys. And at the time, San Jose was, we'd gone through a bunch of owners. They were trying to figure out what to do with us. And there was real rumors, real substantive rumors that the team was moving to Houston. So at the time, just before that, Alexi Lawless was the GM at San Jose. Obviously, Alexi, Rutgers ties, then was the GM at San Jose, and then left San Jose and went to Metro Stars, which eventually became Red Bull, but went to Metro Stars. So in that period where San Jose is getting ready to possibly move, Alexi had gone to Metro Stars. Dom had got a call from Alexi, and they were interested in bringing me over. So, this is the most odd sort of, trade situation ever, in that Dom calls me up and is like, hey, me and JD, John Doyle, are going to play golf. Let's go play some golf and talk. So meet them. We go play 9 holes. We have some lunch. We discuss the situation. We discuss, going to New York. What would that mean? Going to Houston, because Dom was like, yeah, we're going to Houston. What would that mean? Pat's there. You're not going to get much opportunity. New York. Tony Meola was there, but he's, older and, on his last, bit of playing. What would be the best option? Talk through a bunch of things, how it would work, what we would do. Went back out, played another 9, came in afterwards, had a couple bevies. And by the time I left, he had called Alexi and was like, yeah, let's do the trade. Because we were able to discuss through all the positives and negatives. And at the end of it, we both came to the same conclusion. Excuse me, that would be a good opportunity to go to New York. And that's sort of how I ended up there, which was amazing because they have good people on your side, like Dominic Kinnear and John Doyle, to be able to talk through a very, difficult decision in that the success we had in San Jose, but relocating, get me back to New York, closer to my family, all those things, to have those guys, I can't thank them enough to this day for that day playing golf and chatting with them. It was an amazing sort of opportunity, and that's sort of how I ended up in New York.
What was it like working with?
Yeah,
no, go ahead. John.
That was interesting. That was a whole interesting dynamic of how that all transitioned. But at the end of the day, came down to an opportunity to compete and play. So I had to go in and work with Tony, who, I grew up, idolizing Tony. I had a Tony Meola poster. I had Royce Tony Meola gloves. I played against him in the league at that point.
What was the age difference between the two of you, John?
I think it was probably 8 years. I think he was like 34. I was probably 27, 28, maybe.
Gotcha.
Maybe 6 years. So that was an opportunity to work with him. Obviously, a guy I had the opportunity to work with once before. After one of the spells I was at the U20s in San Diego was our training home. One of the breaks I'd come back and I was training with the Metro Stars, and he was the goalkeeper at the Metro Stars at that time. So yeah, that was an interesting dynamic in terms of training with a guy that you kind of looked up to as a kid.
What's the saying? You never want to meet your idols.
Yeah, that would apply to this situation as well.
Is that true? How odd was that?
It was odd. It was an odd dynamic, and obviously Tony is a legend in U.S. soccer, a legend in New Jersey, a legend with the Metro Stars. I took some good things from him, and then just kind of moved on from there.
How long were you working with him being on the same roster with him?
Maybe 2 years.
And did you guys go back and forth with playing time, or was it Tony? Was it
you?
Yeah,
back and forth a little. We flipped back and forth a little bit. I think during that spell, I was still trying to get, obviously it was a competition. He was still being Tony, making saves, doing his thing. I was just creeping, waiting for an opportunity, and it eventually came. One thing as we talk about trying to be a number one, and you brought it up, I spent a lot of time chasing at this point, right? Like my first, I guess at this point, 6 years as a pro was chasing being a number one. I feel like there's a real dynamic shift when you go from chasing being chased when you eventually get it. And this is sort of that period in New York where I'd gone from chasing and now I'm, eventually, number one, and now I'm being chased. And candidly, I was really good at the chasing. I felt like I found a niche for myself based on circumstances of not getting as many games, maybe because you missed opportunities with sort of a second team setup that wasn't around at the time. Being in those competitive environments, I had to get my game playing sort of during the week in training. So, I was very good at chasing and pushing and being there. And then when it got to being a number one, it was a little bit difficult. I actually don't know if I handled that the way I would handle it now, looking back. Again, I put too much pressure on myself, I think, to be perfect. Now that I was the number one, and I didn't give myself enough leeway. And I think part of it is that you have to have coaches that can give you some leeway too. From what, again, looking now I have a broader picture and a bigger database of things. From coaching wise, I would always anticipate, with guys that are getting a run, now is sort of the starter that somewhere between game 12 and 16, 12 and 18 in that run, there'll be a dip. And it came about a lot, especially guys coming from college into the pros, the dip was more significant, but guys that were in the league that probably didn't get a chance to be a number one, now they are being a number one. There was definitely a spell where there was a dip in performance. So I anticipated that as a coach and was able to kind of modify around that window where I know the dip was coming or saw the dip happening to kind of get the training back to the basics and kind of build from there to try and mitigate the drop. When I was going through this as a player, I was just trying to stay afloat and not drown sort of in being the number one, performing, dealing with the pressure, and then getting results. And I think that's one thing that I could have done better as a player, but I made sure to address when I was coaching that allowed my to be that much better for it, because I knew that was going to happen.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Goalkeepers, what does your goalkeeping development roadmap look like? Are you focusing on all 5 elements of development of a goalkeeper? Those 5 elements are your technical abilities, your tactical understanding of the game, your physical growth, your psychological balance, and your leadership skills. If you answered no to any of those elements of development, you are not fully developing yourself as a goalkeeper. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we focus on developing goalkeepers through education of goalkeeping specific moments in the game, all while featuring the 5 elements of a goalkeeper's development. For $199 for the year, yes, the cost of 2 one-hour private training sessions, you will have the opportunity to participate in weekly live educational sessions on goalkeeping specific topics. You can also take advantage of our library of over 250 hours of recorded goalkeeping educational content. You have the opportunity to participate in goalkeeping specific mentorships. You'll have an immediate connection to college goalkeeper coaches. You'll also have the opportunity to have 24/7 online support. You'll also receive discounts for gloves, equipment, camps, and clinics. So goalkeepers, if you'd like to learn more on how the United Goalkeeping Alliance can support you with your goalkeeping developmental roadmap, please contact us at the information above. I'm Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance. Now back to our podcast.
And now back to our episode.
Did you have goalkeeper coaches what was their role in your, as a supporter, like a support system for you, but how did they help you kind of navigate the waters, not only in San Jose, but also with the Red Bulls and in your pro career? You've always had that tight battle, and how did they help you?
Interesting. San Jose, the goalkeeper coach the first year was somebody different than I had for the rest of the time there, and a guy that I still call on to this day, even when I was coaching, and still call on to this day for advice, is a guy named Tim Hanley. I think for me, Tim doesn't get enough credit for what he's done goalkeeping wise in MLS. The goalkeepers that he's been with, the goalkeepers that have been successful, the amount of MLS Cups that he's won. It's a guy that doesn't get a lot of the accolades as much because, quite frankly, he's not a guy that's out, self-promoting himself around. He just kind of goes about his business. But for me, he was very good of understanding the dynamic between, at the time, Joe Cannon and myself, and then moving into Pat. He understood how to deal with sort of an older goalkeeper and a younger goalkeeper, and sort of how to manage the two personalities. He knew what Pat needed during the week, and he tried to get me what I needed, but the focus was Pat, and Pat being ready to go on the weekend. And that's sort of how I learned my coaching as well, is that the balance between the two, understanding what each needs, but also giving the guy who's going to be doing on the weekend absolutely the attention that's needed for them to perform. And I think that goalkeeper coach in Tim Hanley, again, I go back, he doesn't get enough credit, and should in major league circles as the best. In New York, rest in peace, Des McElwain was the goalkeeper coach, and good goalkeeper coach, detailed, was very good at putting actions and things together. I think one thing that could have been there that wasn't there was sort of the post-op sort of talks about, okay, you weren't successful in this, but this is what I want from you, type of thing. It wasn't like a sort of idea of how the position needs to be played, what you're expecting. It was just sort of going out and performing and keeping the ball in the back of the net. I think what transitioned for me during that window of learning and being a part of that to what I become as a goalkeeper coach was addressing sort of, this is how I want you to play. You're good enough to do this. Go out and execute. And I feel like that was, and then if it's not executed, why was it not executed? It just gave a good sort of working relationship. And I felt like that was what was missing in that time. But again, looking back, those things all led to how I thought about being a goalkeeper coach. So being in those environments, understanding dynamic, understanding what that goalkeeper coach did well, and stealing that, and then adding what I think could have been done better, was sort of how I kind of want to approach that. How I approached that. It was a tough. It was tough.
How was he with being like the psychological guy you would go to when needed if having a tough time with your competitor?
Yeah, so that's sort of why I sought outside consultation on a lot of that, only because there's also a trust factor involved with that, in terms of letting know that maybe you're showing, maybe you have some sort of weakness, even though you didn't want to, you don't want to show any weakness, but letting a coach know that you had some sort of weakness, and whether they would use that against you in terms of playing you or finding somebody else or whatever. So I kept that pretty close to me and sought outside consultation for those things.
Fair enough. Did you go regarding the mental support? Did you use it just in time of need, or were you using it once you've identified you wanted to use it, like you always used it throughout the rest of your career?
I used it all the way. Once I jumped into it, I used it, weekly for the rest of my career.
Would would you start that earlier in your career? And if so, at what age would you suggest people just from I'm a big believer in it. My wife's a cognitive therapist. I'm a big believer in this type of thing. I think people need to talk about it. I think more people talk, the better you feel and the more expectations are out there. That said, how would you guide a younger goalkeeper in this capacity?
Delicately, because I feel like, I got to a point where I decided that I felt like I wanted to go down this road and seek it out. As a kid, especially, I would say, the younger the better, but again, they have to be willing and open to doing this. And I don't know when that happens in sort of their cognitive development, that they can recognize that. I would say go as young as, middle school age, but again, there's so much stuff going on in these kids' lives now that it's difficult. You know what I mean? And I didn't have to deal with it, thank God, some of the stuff that goes on nowadays. But if a kid is willing, then I would seek it out and get them the sort of help that they need, whether it's, from a sporting standpoint or whether it's, life and school standpoint.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in mentorships too, and I'm confident Blige is as well. And just having someone they can speak to and just talk to regularly about things and having that trust.
I think that's even better. I think that's even better. The trust to have somebody that they can rely on, that they can talk to, I think is even more beneficial than actual, maybe even the therapy. I mean, I think
it's not like you need a professional. Yeah, it's not like you need a professional person to be there, but to have someone outside of parents who understand the position and have like a mentorship role there, I think can go a long way in a player's development. A long way.
So you bring that up, and that was sort of, I go back to Tim Hanley again as when I became a coach. He was a guy, I'd reach out to about stuff regularly, and we commiserate over, here's what's happening, here's this thing again, it's showing itself, or whatever it is. How did you do it then, and what did that how did that work out, and does it work, that sort of stuff.
I'm really fascinated by your coaching career as well, because you've talked a lot about it without specifically talking about it. It was kind of interesting. Like you talk about your playing career, it's like, well, now that I have all this body of work, it helps me in my coaching capacity because I have so much experience that I've seen all these things and learned what to do, what not to do. What would you say from a coaching standpoint is your strength based on everything that you've seen with all these experiences? What's your strength, and what advice would you give goalkeeper coaches regarding being a great goalkeeper coach or mentorship, or just using your experience to help them get along and move forward in their career? How would you guide goalkeeper coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I had this body of work that I was able to rely on to give me some sort of ability to be relatable. I think that's the biggest thing, is making sure you're relatable to the guys and what they're going through, and understanding how they're progressing and where they need help. Fortunately, I was able to be relatable because I had a lot of those experiences. If you're a goalkeeper coach that doesn't have those experiences, how do you get them? And I think that's just, coaching, duration of coaching, and putting yourself in environments where sometimes it's probably uncomfortable. But in the end, as we talked about, like you learn these things in those moments to help you get better down the line. I think partially, even when I was a player towards the end of my career, again, going back to making it to, getting the number one and then not being number one anymore and still kind of moving on, in that window of not being the number one, but being sort of an older guy in the room, it gave me an opportunity to kind of really pay attention to what was going on in the goalkeeper space, because I felt like I was a good add, because I relieved some of the pressure from maybe the goalkeeper coach in terms of having a veteran presence who was committed to the training and kind of working to get better, not screwing up the drills, focused on what needed to be done and adding input when needed. And in fact, I was already sort of starting my coaching career towards the end of my playing career because I was doing those things already. The guy in Toronto who brought me to Toronto in 2010, Mike Toshak, he would always, kind of refer to me as sort of like the catcher in baseball. Like, you kind of see what's going on. You're behind the plate. You're giving the information to the starters, and you're just kind of making things happen and holding it kind of together for the group. And that's sort of kind of where I kind of ended up in my career towards the end. And again, when I needed to go in, I could spell 7, 10, 12 games, no problem. And in fact, I could be effective in that spell. I think if it got longer than that, I just needed a little more runway to get through the ups and downs. I think that's a benefit of having a coach that believes in you, and a coach and a system and a group that's committed to you as being, the goalkeeper. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
No, it's good stuff. That's very good stuff. Question for you, John. Like, when it came down to your retirement phase now, okay? Like, how was that? How did you deal with that, especially after working so hard, being at number 2, then finally making number 1, and all of a sudden you're going, oh boy, my goodness, maybe it's time for me to get out of the game. How would you handle that aspect?
So that was a tough one for a while. I knew it was the right decision. I was getting towards the end. Physically, I still felt pretty good. Lingering soreness would last a little bit longer than normal, but nothing I wasn't able to deal with. Performance-wise, I was still doing okay, but there was a little bit of something chirping back here that you don't want to hear chirping, but it would always chirp and kind of deter a little bit. And that voice was just kind of creeping, and I didn't like that. And so I kind of addressed sort of where I was. I was was in Toronto, then went to Chicago for my last year, and had a good opportunity, had plenty of, games that year, felt good, felt like I could go and do it again. And then, another one where you kind of get how things happen. I had a conversation at the end of the season with management that said one thing, and then I had a conversation with the coaching staff that said another, and they didn't mesh up, and I just felt like it, who was lying at that point, or who wasn't. It's not lying. It's like, who doesn't want to tell the truth because they don't want to be the bad guy? And I felt like that's another problem, by the way. If you're a coach, and I'm going to stare right in the camera, if you're a coach of any kid at any age, tell them the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. They'll respect you much more in the end by being truthful about what's going on and about how they can get better or why they're not playing than if you try and sugarcoat it. PSA done. Sorry about that.
That's good.
That was,
Bravo.
For me,
standing ovation over here, sir. Standing ovation over here. I love it. Good for you. Thank you.
Just tell how it is, and no problem. So they left a bad taste in my mouth, and at that point, I didn't need anything more to kind of set me over the edge to kind of go, yeah, it's probably time for me to remove myself. So I ended up, at the time, as I said, I was in Chicago. In New York and Toronto in 2010. At the time, I met my now wife. I left for a year. We kind of kept things going, and I moved back here after the 2011 season, the start of 2012. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, all right, I'm done. There was an opportunity. I was actually picked up. I played for Bruce Arena in New York with Red Bull. I had a really good relationship with Bruce. I think he didn't know what to think of me at first, but then through how I conducted myself and went about my business, I think he garnered a level of kind of respect for me and how I approach things. And he was in LA at the time. I'd gotten essentially released from Chicago, and they ended up picking me up in sort of the reentry draft, which I don't think they have anymore. But I had to call and just say, listen, guys, I'm hanging them up, which was a tough call to make, because to think about it, but for the words to actually come out and tell somebody that you're not going to do it, because I kind of felt like I was letting him down a little bit, even though he probably didn't feel that way, because he was like, oh, I just got to go find another goalkeeper. But in my head, I felt like I was letting somebody down who was good to me. So that was a difficult conversation. But I was able to just be confident in that I knew what I was going to do, which was just retire. And at the time, I had no real plan of what I was going to go into next. I kind of bounced around a little bit. I worked for an agent who dealt primarily with baseball players, and kind of delved into that a little bit. And then with being doing that, with being in Toronto, I was able to get an opportunity in the academy, because I had played here. I kept up my relationships with guys, and there was an opportunity to go full-time coaching in the academy. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back into it. As I said, when I left playing, there was a bit of a sour taste, and I just wanted to get away. And then I started to kind of get the love of it back, and really had an opportunity to do a couple like one-off coaching sessions that I was like, oh man, I'm loving this again. And when that opportunity came to get into the academy, I was like, all right, I'm going for it. So it was
head
a good
coach or goalkeeper coach?
Goalkeeper coach for the academy.
No head coaching.
I started off in the academy. I was straight goalkeeper coach.
Right on.
Stayed with the goalkeeper coaching through the first year, and then a bunch of transitions happened. New GM, new coach, new academy director, and Greg Vanny came in, and I rode the coattails with Greg from he was the head of the academy, then got put in position as head coach of the first team, and I rode the coattails with him to the first team.
Nice. Now you survived a couple coaching changes there, correct? In Toronto?
Yeah. So Greg, this staff was together through 2020. Had a really good run of things. 16, 17, 18, couple MLS Cup, 19, I guess, because we went to 3 finals in 6 years. Went to a CONCACAF Champions League final. 4 Canadian championships, Supporters Shield, MLS Cup. Like, that team was just, really good. It was a machine. It was a real fun time to be a part of it, with the success that we had. And then in 2020, Greg left. This was another pivotal sort of moment. Greg left. I got an opportunity, saw sort of the writing on the wall here at Toronto, and took the job in LA. He started his career at the Galaxy. He went to UCLA. So he wanted to get back out west. There was an opportunity to go with him, with my wife and what she has going on in her career, being long distance, with her being here, me being there, just didn't make a lot of sense. So I opted to stay. I opted to stay with whoever was going to come in. And it was a difficult run. I think, in this whole thing, one thing that I still struggle with is the pandemic, because we in Canada, the 3 teams here, were forced to relocate. So I spent, a significant spell of the pandemic living away from, my wife, my dogs, in either Hartford or Orlando were the two places. So, you know, that was a tough spell. I still have a little bit of, you know, not to take light, but PTSD from it, because it was a tough time being away from home and not knowing what's going on and constantly trying to figure out, you know, the balance between, you know, the coaching and having some sort of life on the road. And in that spell, it was difficult on the players, clearly, because they had to relocate. Some of them were able to bring their families with them, which was nice. My wife had to stay here because of her job, but you know, it didn't give the coach at the time a real good opportunity. Chris Armas came in, he was the head coach, and struggled, didn't last. You know, he only lasted about 7 or 8 games, and it was just a tough decision, tough hire, especially during a time where we had such a group of players here that were so used to playing in a certain way, that changing it and changing how the style of play was so abruptly, I mean, it just didn't work out at the end. So that was an interesting sort of transition. You know, we were still in Orlando, so you know, we had interim coaches, which was I was a part of the, you know, the coaching staff through that interim window, and then eventually led to you know, Bob Bradley coming in and working for Bob, who has been so successful from, you know, NCAA level all the way through professional national team. You know, but it had its ups and downs as well. So eventually that didn't work out for Bob as well. He was relieved of his duties. I stuck around after Bob was relieved for another, I was probably here for another 30 days, maybe. My contract was up at the end of that year of December of 23. They were going to hire a new coach who was going to bring in his own staff. So I could have wrote it out to the end of the year, but I actually requested that I'd be able to just depart as the club was transitioning to a different coach and different staff. It's just easier for me to remove myself at that point, because I'd been the longest standing coach in the organization. Bring in a new guy and see what happens. That guy didn't last very long. John Herbin, he was here for maybe a year or so. And now they have Robin Fraser, who Robin is a very good friend of mine. We coached together with Toronto FC. He was an assistant coach under Greg Vanny. Him and Greg had worked together previously at Chivas USA, when Chivas was a team in MLS. So they have some history, and now Robin's back and trying to lead this thing in the right direction, getting back to sort of the way that it was when we were all there, which sadly is not the case anymore. Hopefully it does get to that point. They're moving in the right direction. They made some significant improvements in the last year or so. So we'll see what happens.
Now, what are you doing with yourself now after all this development and experience?
After all this, I do. So, if anybody's paid attention the last little bit, there's a league here called the Canadian Premier League. It's an 8-team league. Just recently had their final in November, which you know, virally went massive because the player in the game, David Rodriguez, scored what they deemed the icicle kick, because the game was played in an absolute blizzard, and he did a bicycle kick, and it got, you know, a ton of views worldwide. So I do you know, color commentary for the league. So I do that. Still passionate about golf, and I moonlight at a golf course, very, very, very well established golf course here in Toronto, rich in history, rich in its playing and its course. So I spent some time over there, and I spent some time doing some color commentary.
That's awesome. I know.
Yeah.
I know
John, real
the.
quick, I'm
Yeah.
going to jump in here real quickly, Blige. Hey, you want a
Yeah.
good laugh, Conway?
Yeah.
Go golfing with Blige. Go golfing with Blige.
He has.
Oh yeah, no,
And
we have.
record it. Record his
record it.
swing.
Yeah.
Lodge and I probably shouldn't be telling this, but we go to training in the morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock at Rutgers. And there would be several days where it was about 11 o'clock and I'd be like, Lodge, we're heading over to the course. You coming? He's like, yeah, I'll be there. And we go play golf right after training. When I probably should have been going to some classes, but
That's awesome. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
John's a good golfer until he gets to the point where he's going to get. We played against John Rath in the alumni game, and John Rath was a great trash talker, and as is John, and Rath kept betting him that he was. I think John was up by 3-4 strokes, something like that, and John Rath kept busting his chops, and I think it came down to the 18th hole, and John missed a putt or something like that, but John Rath talked him down and ended up winning a little bet, whatever those guys had decided.
that guy, he always has the ability to talk trash at the right time to throw me off.
It's awesome. I love that. I love that part of the game. I love bringing that competitive trash talk into the training environment. Like I really do. Even like conversations like this, like it just makes for that competitive vibe, which is kind of how we started this conversation with you at the youth levels. The competitive vibe is instantly skyrocketed when you start to yap a little bit. And I'm a big fan of in my own training sessions, talking a little trash to the kids to get their competitive juices flowing. And it kind of works.
It does. I mean, Blodge came up with this game. I remember it to this day. It was like a volleyball type game over top of the crossbar. It was like 2-on-2. And I just remember that, you got to keep the ball up. You could throw it into an area to get a point, but you couldn't let it hit the ground. It was like one of these games. Clearly, it was a game that, you made up in a living room and it translated to goalkeeping somehow, right? But I just remember the games that we had were that and the trash talking and how, that was the competitive sort of start of the day was that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riasso looked down one time, so I was playing a 2-man volleyball. I said, I don't know what you're doing down there, though. I don't know how it pertains to the game. I said, I don't really care. We're having a lot of fun,
It's funny though, Blas. I to this day, up until I got done coaching, but I would try and start the day with some sort of game like that to kind of get it going a little bit, get some competitiveness to start the training session before we got anything, sort of functional. Whether it was just sort of keep up 2-touch or kind of, a volleyball type game or, any other type of game I would kind of come up with just to get the juices flowing, to get the day started.
Yeah, it's very true.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Hello, clubs. What is your goalkeeper culture like? Do you have 1 to 2 people that just does it all? Whether they're down the other end of the field running a goalkeeper training session. Maybe they're helping a head coach out in a team training session. Maybe they attend all tournaments and games and give in-game feedback. They help with individual development plans. They help in the recruiting initiative. Simply put, they can't do it all. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we're here to be your supplemental resource for all things goalkeeping. We start with education. We will help assist in the goalkeeping development through educating your goalkeepers on goalkeeping specific topics featuring the 5 elements of development. Your tactical understanding, your technical abilities, the physical growth of a goalkeeper, the psychological balance, and the leadership skills needed to be a great goalkeeper. We have over 250 hours of recorded content for all of your goalkeepers and coaches and parents to take advantage of. We offer mentorships for both goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches. We offer lesson plan support and curriculum support for coaches. If you'd like to learn more about the United Goalkeeping Alliance and how we can help your club get to the next level with your goalkeeping culture as a supplemental resource, please utilize the contact information above. This is Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance, and now back to the episode.
And now back to our episode.
John, thank you for your time today. I could be here all day asking you stories about your career and learning from it, and I just want to thank you for that. But I do have one final question from me. And
hit me.
We've spoken to a lot of audiences today. There are 2 in particular we have not really deliberately spoken to, and I'd like you, in similar with your public service announcement, I want you to kind of do something similar, but I want you to speak to parents, regarding the development of the competition between 1 and 2 and the slim margins that separates your child and the decision-making process that goes into it. Because parents can sometimes, I call it the hardest position in club soccer is the goalkeeping parent. They don't know much about it, but they're struggling just like their kid is when they're the number 2. The other person I
Sure.
want you to speak to are head coaches and how they might not understand that competitive vibe between 1 and 2 and how much influence they actually have on the goalkeepers in that competitive environment without realizing it.
Okay. Parents. Where do you want to go here with this one? This is interesting. So,
yeah, we save the best questions for last, Jon.
Man, parents, for everything that they want to do right, they just do a lot of things wrong when it comes down to this. Like, I think parents just need to be supportive, try and understand the position, try and understand the difficulty of the position, and then let the experts kind of go about their way. You just kind of, my mom always did this. They never ever talked about a game afterwards, no matter how bad I performed or how good I performed. My mom would always just be, hey, did you have fun out there? Oh, did you have a good day? Did you have a fun day? Did you enjoy your buddies? Like, she didn't talk about the actual actions that occurred during the game, or why didn't you make that save, or why did you decide to do that? There was none of that. And I think parents just need to be parents, which is make sure your kids are fulfilled, they're safe, they're getting what they need, and letting the sort of experts deal with the soccer stuff. I think too many times parents get involved and overly involved, and becomes a detriment to the player and the kid. And I think at the end of the day, it winds up driving kids out of the sport because of it, indirectly, because the parent becomes too involved and overzealous with what's going on.
Great point.
I do appreciate parents who are committed to it, though, because my mom committed to driving me, an hour to and from training multiple times a week. And that time spent together with my mom, like, to this day, I still cherish that time, being in the car with her, driving the practices. And that was an important part of my development. And I think parents can be that person. Just be there for your kid. Good performance, bad performance. Just make sure they're enjoying it. And if they're enjoying it and getting better, they'll be successful.
Very good.
Head coaches. This is an interesting one because, as a goalkeeper coach, you spend a lot of time butting heads with the head coach on a lot of things. And I think you're right. The head coaches always have an opinion on the position without necessarily having the understanding of the position or the technical knowledge of the position. And sometimes as a goalkeeper coach, you have to help them understand that. And I think one thing you brought up was how important the head coach is in your job as a goalkeeper coach. You're the one who's always with the goalkeeper as the conduit between sort of the coaching staff, the players, the rest of the players, and the coaching staff. You're privy to a lot more information, at least in my cases, than some of the other coaches, because it's so intimate when you're working with a group. You get a full understanding of what's going on under the hood in the locker room, being a goalkeeper coach. And that information is critical and beneficial to a head coach and how he uses it or doesn't use it. And I think one thing that is beneficial is just, you have two goalkeepers. Yeah, you have to balance a lot of other players, and coaches are like, I got to deal with all these other players. But these two goalkeepers that are fighting, or three in a lot of cases, are instrumental to that successful, to the success of the team. So, I think it's important that the head coach has his own relationship with the goalkeepers, not you being that relationship. I think a lot of times the head coach goes, "Oh yeah, John's got it. You got the goalkeepers. Let the goalkeepers do whatever." And I think it's very important that the head coach is involved. The head coach is having discussions. The head coach is listening to the goalkeeper coach, either do, the post game or pre-game scouts, going over what you're doing in the training, being around the training to see how you're approaching it and how you're addressing the goalkeepers and what maybe the goalkeepers need. And sometimes the goalkeeper just needs, whether it's the first guy who's maybe in a little bit of a tough spell, just needs you to go, "Hey, keep it going, man. I saw you in training today." As a head coach going, "Yeah, you're doing it. Like, you're keep it going. You're fine. Just keep going. You're going to come out of this," or whatever it may be. Those little anecdotes are extreme value, and it makes your job as a goalkeeper coach easier. So I think, instead of just saying, "Hey, goalkeeper coach, you're over there at the other side of the field doing your thing," have an understanding, have conversations, have a relationship with your goalkeepers that benefits the entire group.
That's awesome. Brilliant. Yeah, very good, John. I got to tell you what, John. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say this, the conversation we've had today, first of all, put together a lot of things that I didn't know about what you went through, which is very valuable to me and with my relationship that I have with you. And I think what you have said is fantastic for what we wanted to cover here today. My original thought of you being just the perfect guy for this conversation came to fruition. You gave an awful lot of insights and that are very, very valuable for any level of goalkeeper from being a kid right up through the pros. I want to thank you for that, man. It's been wonderful to listen to you, John. Wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on. And
John, appreciate your time, man. And what we like to do, just so you know how we end this typically, we like to give you the last word on anything that you might want to, final coaching point, so to speak, with the 1 versus 2 and the separators, whatever advice that might be. And then you're going to hang up. You're going to come, and Blodge and I are going to stick around. And we're going to talk about this episode without you on it. This guarantees you listen to this episode to hear what we have to say about you.
Absolutely. You know it.
So, hey, without further ado,
Blodge isn't talking any trash,
Hey, he's gotten in some sneaky punches once some of these guests have left. So you might want to, anyway, we'll turn it over to you, knowing what's next.
Last bit for me is, goalkeepers nowadays have so many different pathways to get to where they want to go. And you may feel like you're at a dead end, but that pathway may just not be the one that you need to be on. So, make a change and how you approach things, make a change on how you want to go about it. Maybe it's a change of team, who knows? But there's so many ways to get to that end goal. If you continue to work hard, work smartly, when those opportunities arise, and that's when you'll be able to take advantage and reach to where you want to be and reach the goals that you have set for yourself. Because I think goal setting is super important. And having that out there, that little carrot dangling, the chase is something that worked well for me. And I think, would work well for anybody. Just have it out there and fight for it tooth and nail. And along the way, you'll have some really good experiences, and you'll have some experiences that weren't so good, but they'll drive you to know what you need to do going forward. Pretty simple.
Life is simple, John. But
people overcomplicate it, right?
Yeah. Well, do me a favor. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Blodgy.
No, I want to hear you.
Yeah, I always get kind of wishy-washy here on some of the aspects of how I kind of got to where I am. And again, I had really good people in my corner. Blodge is one of them, that provided me opportunities and gave me a chance to keep progressing and keep chasing it. And I think that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for those coaches that early on, again, like they weren't compensated. Nowadays, this is a big business, as you guys know. I mean, this is a big business, and there's a lot of people that are in it that probably shouldn't be. So
Thank you.
you need to find the right people. You need to find the right people and the right people for you. And again, just taking advantage of stuff that's out there in front of you that, fortunate enough to take advantage of those opportunities and run this thing for as long as I could. I mean, 20 plus years, I did this as best I could and chased it for as long as I could, and loved every minute of it. Fond looking back at it. I think there's still more for me out there, just maybe not coaching at the moment. Again, between us, I'm sure that opportunities were there to get back into doing this, and get back into coaching, and I decided it wasn't the right thing for me at this time. Sometimes you got to make hard decisions, and as much as that's what you're used to and that's what you've grown accustomed to in the lifestyle, like sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you got to make a hard decision, and that hard decision is going to pay off. You have to get through the muck and the swamp a little bit, but it'll all be blue water and sandy beaches on the other side if you do it the right way. And that's sort of therapeutically for me, saying that is kind of how I'm working through this next phase for me.
That's awesome. Awesome. Great words, Jon. Great words. Listen, do me a favor. Give my love to your family. Give my love to your family. Yeah.
We'll
And
do.
look forward to get down this way and play a little golf at Rutgers, one of these
Let's
alumni
do it.
things. And one, you never know, I might cross the border and get up there just to hang out too. So
You're welcome anytime. Welcome to come by and play at my spot over here. You'll be
big courses,
blown away.
the big time stuff. All right.
Real stuff. Real golf. So
thank you, Jon. Really appreciate it, man.
my
Great to
pleasure,
see you.
guys. Thank you. Yeah.
Jon,
right.
thank you so much for the time today. Appreciate you.
All right.
My pleasure,
Take care,
guys.
buddy.
I'll hang up so you guys can talk some trash.
All right. Sounds good, man. See you later, Jon.
Huh. That was awesome.
Unbelievable, wasn't it?
What a story.
I know. And there's a lot of pieces in there that I didn't realize, especially I knew there were some up and downs in there, but I didn't realize how up and how down they were,
Which one stood out for you?
When he went in to get when he wanted to get help, psychological help. The thing when he hurt his ankle, when he broke his ankle, ready to go in and do it, and all of a sudden now, oh, geez, now and then Pat Onstad comes in and gets on a roll. It had to be tough. It had to be tough. And but I tell you what, you can see by listening to him the great character that he is. The really, really good human being that he is. That he was going to have continued success at some point, and whatever he was going through was just going to get him there.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think a lot of our listeners should really take from this. One of the things you should take from it is you don't always know where you're going to be, or you don't always know where you're going to go, or how you're going to get there. Just keep going, just keep going. And because you're at a certain point in your life, you're going to be doing something. I always tell this to kids. I say, listen, you're 18 right now. Think about yourself being 10 years down the road when you're 28. Well, guess what? You're going to be doing something at 28 that you're supposed to be doing at that point in time because you're doing it at that point in time. Don't worry how you got there. Have the experience and learn from the experience. Figure out what's the right thing to do, not the right thing to do, and keep the proper course. And the thing like Jon said was so cool is that, you get certain people who seem to come into your lives and help direct you that way. And if you're always open to that opportunity of allowing those people to come in and help influence you in your decisions and in your path, you'll be fine. It's when you fight it all the time and you think that you're the right person all the time, or you get into the wrong type of leadership or education, teachers, and those kinds of things, that you have to learn what's right for you and what's not right for you, and John is a perfect example of that, and he had some battles, which is great to hear because I want all the goalkeepers out there, all the goalkeeper parents out there and coaches to understand that it's not an easy thing, just the nature of our position. The nature of our position is competition, fighting, trying to be the number one, learning how to deal with the breakdown of losing that position. How do I get back? From whom do I seek help? All these kinds of things. I mean, John hit on every one of those points, and they were all very important points and very potent points in how to do it from one person's point of view, and everybody else's experience is going to be different, but the situations are a lot the same. And I loved listening to him. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. He hit on points that we all really need to hear and should hear, and it's points that we always talk about in the UGKA and so on. And yeah, I thought it was tremendous.
Yeah, I have a couple, and I always speak about life lessons. Like
Yeah,
I'm big into implementing that into our whatever we're doing. I just think that
sure.
you can learn from it and you can benefit in other aspects of life, not just soccer. That said, these are some of the listen to some of these words I wrote. I have a page full of notes here.
Of course you do.
Goal setting's a big deal with him. He
Yep.
sets goals and he accomplishes them. And he spoke about that, but he also relied heavily on a support system, whether it was that mental support, whether it was coaching, whether it was his parents, whether he always had a group around him helping him get to that. Yourself, obviously, Paul, like you were a big key figure of that, which I want to speak to in a moment, by the way, about your relationship with him.
Okay.
Dealing with adversity, like he had a support group to help him deal with adversity. He didn't never seem to be alone. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
always had a group of people around him.
Good point.
But the self-belief and confidence that comes through experience, and I want to use that Blackburn situation specifically, like he all of a sudden came back from England and it seemed like his self-belief skyrocketed.
It did.
Right. And then his performance just like I can do this. And it's like once that self-belief took place because he experienced it, boom, like he was
Yeah.
off. And then he stuck to what made him him. His work ethic must be insane. Like I like working with people like that because they're just going to work and work and work and they're going to get it right. And they're going to get it right at the highest levels. Like that's a life lesson to me. Like it's crazy to see all the success he's had and the never quit and how hard it was for him to hang him up and to not quit, but retire.
Yeah.
Seemed to be a very emotional, hard decision for him. And I get it because he worked his tail off for so long. And then to say, all right, I'm on to my next part of my career must have been very difficult for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny. I'm glad he actually brought it up. I can always remember that John was playing for us, 6'5". We never had any cross ball into the box. He just got everything, and he made some great saves. Very good shot stopper. But he would continually kick the ball out of bounds 5, 6 times. It became kind of a running joke. And I'm so glad he brought that up because, I was going to hit
You were
him.
getting ready to rib him on it?
I was getting ready to get hit him. But but I actually use that with all my goalkeepers now. I tell that story about John but how he worked on correcting that part of his game, and now he became a very successful pro. But yeah, it was kind of a running joke for a while with John. So
That's pretty funny. Well,
yeah.
the one thing I'd like to speak to too is how quickly he spoke to competitiveness being a motivator to him, even at the youngest ages. Like that's one of the first characteristics of his play he mentioned at a very young age. It always stuck with him, apparently. The other was when he talked about meditation in his teenage years. And I found that interesting too, because I'm like that any way kids can get into clearing their mind, whether it's speaking with somebody, having a mentor, meditation, to me is a huge advantage over the rest of your competition. But it's a matter of like self-discovery and recognizing the fact that you need to do it. And he kept saying that, like, there's no specific time. Like they need to buy into it in order for it to work. I found that to be very valuable, but also like a heads up to goalkeepers and parents who have influence with their goalkeepers. Like, if you can buy into this stuff, like this stuff works. And you're getting it from the highest levels that this stuff works. And it doesn't just work with soccer. Like that's a benefit for everything from a life lesson perspective and just how you're going to view life.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's like one of the things we stress with goalkeeping, at least I do in all my trainings, is staying within moments, completing moments, and then going on to the next one. You can't hang in a game in our position, you can't let a moment overpower you, whether it's a good moment or a poor moment, because there's another moment's coming right at you.
Yeah.
And I meditated as well. I did very heavily when I was in grad school for about 5 years. And being ADHD without any medication at the time, I needed to do something to get myself focused because now I'm heading towards a career now. College days are over where you just kind of did things that you did, and now you had to say, well, listen, you're going to have to get some work here. You got to start making a living. What are you going to do? I had the thought pattern and then thoughts where I was going to do. I was going to go into teaching phys ed, probably coaching something. But then the meditation helped me get really focused, and it really, really worked. And it kind of got me going on my uh, pathway, for lack of a better way of saying it, of being very mentally in tune with what's going on and trying to help young goalkeepers and stuff get their minds and their spirit where it needs to be successful. Because when I first started out goalkeeper coaching, I was never taught. I had to learn on my own. And when Bob asked me to come down to Rutgers, and he said, listen, you're going to be my goalkeeper coach. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just go out and do it. I said, geez, what am I going to do? And I just wanted to do drills. Activities. What can I get these guys doing? Well, I've learned very quickly that you had to work on a mental aspect because you could not train the same group, everybody in the same group the same way sometimes because they had different ways of doing things. So my strength as a goalkeeper coach initially was that the spirit of things, the character of things, leadership, how to be a good human being, how to deal with the ups and downs. That's where I got my reputation, if you want to say. I don't know. But then as I learned the game, then it all came together because I took the mentorship part of training the position seriously immediately. I realized that that's where it had to be. And then everything else came into place. So it's good to hear John say that because it's nice to hear somebody who has achieved the levels that he has achieved, but realizing he needed help and he went and got it. And I think that is a invaluable lesson out of this conversation. Go get help because we can't do it alone. There's nobody can do anything alone, especially in today's world. You kidding me? You need help, you need guidance, you got to have good people around you. And it goes along with the parents, coaching staff, psychological help, friends. I mean, that your circle of people and things around you are what's going to make you successful. So just hopefully you make the right decisions who those people are.
And that success group, or not success group, excuse me, that support group for
Yeah,
success, you're always going to need a support group in anything you want to be successful at, like whether it's
exactly.
work or business, or whether it's a relationship, or whether it is soccer. Like you're always going to need a support group to help you succeed. And it's not like sometimes I feel kids have this ego about them with getting help. It's not getting help. It's you're going to need that. Like that's
Yeah,
the reason we're trying to guide you into these areas. And I think sometimes kids like, I don't need that. Like that. Why
yeah,
would I need that? I'm not, I don't. And it's like, well, hold on. We're not saying
yeah, yeah,
you, we're giving you an extra, it's another way of developing yourself. And
exactly.
that I think sometimes gets overlooked and people take it personally, or kids take it personally.
Yeah,
Parents too. I mean, I think a lot of people can use it and use it as a reflective tool, use it as a development tool. And again, it could be in the form of a mentorship. It can be in the form of just a teammate or a friend that you just trust and have an honest, ongoing conversation with. But in my opinion, that part is essential.
yeah, and that's true whether you are climbing the ranks in what you're doing
Yeah.
or when you're at the top.
Yes.
Because just because you're at the top and now you're formulating people underneath you, you need a support group too.
How interesting was it that he struggled with being the number one and having someone chase him now? Like the roles were
That
reversed a
was
little
very
bit, and
interesting.
he kind of like ruh-roh. Like,
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
a
yeah, I know.
minute.
It's a complete dynamic. How he became very comfortable being number two,
Yeah.
and how he figured it out and how I know I can chase people and I can when my moment comes, I know I can do it. But then when you're there and trying to hold everybody off, it was very interesting. Really good guy. Jon Conway has been one of my favorite goalkeepers I've worked with because he's such a good human being, and we've always had good relationships. So that was very fun having him on.
But John, Paul. I'm going to say one last thing regarding
Sure.
my observation, and then I'll
Yeah,
turn it over
cool.
to you to close. Um, that said, I just want to speak to the relationship that I've witnessed between you and John, and to me, it is awesome seeing that coach, student, coach, goalkeeper, coach, player relationship, and how it's still there even after decades. You know what I mean? And then just hearing about how much of an influence you've been in his growth, but also how much of a key contributor he has been in your growth. The relation, and hearing you guys talk back and forth, it's I hope to strive to have that relationship with people in general, and it was very cool seeing the relationship you two have. So you're blessed with that, and a little envious on my end here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but don't sell yourself short. You are that type of person already. So in what you do
Thank
with UGKA and the people around you. So yeah, it's that's the beauty of why, you know, never been like a considered professional athlete. Um, Never really reached the level some of these young people have in the game or any game. I've gotten my satisfaction out of the relationships that I've had, and I'm very fortunate in that regard with multiple relationships of people that I could call up right now. We could have conversations with. It's like, they're all like family to me. But John is a special human being, and he's been a special part of my development as a coach and allowing me the chance to help him get to the next level. And it's nice hearing him really give accolades to people who have helped him along the way. That shows a lot of respect and appreciation, and not everybody does that. You know what I'm saying? So it was a great conversation. So, John, thank you so much for being a part of it. It was a it was eye-opening and very rewarding. And you're in a good place, and you're going to have nothing but success. So, thank you very much, John. All right, buddy. I think we're
I
good.
appreciate you, brother. Until the
Yeah.
next time.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us at this edition of Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blotch, powered by the UGKA, United Goalkeeping Alliance, the #1 virtual learning platform for goalkeeping in the world. That's pretty cool. We take the whisperings of goalkeepers from underneath the crossbars, and we bring them to you in open and honest conversations. There's nothing about the position that we won't talk about. Looking forward to all of our conversations that'll be upcoming. You, as a goalkeeper, have chosen the most difficult position to master in the game. But remember, it's the best position in the best game in the world. Special thanks today for joining us with Eric Eisenhut, the founder of the UGKA, for offering his insights on what the UGKA is all about, as well as sharing his knowledge about the position and his passion of what he would like to see happen with it and what we need to work on. Thank you very much, Eric. It was great. See you next time. Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blodge. And we appreciate it very much. By the way, if you would like to offer your suggestions on different topics for us to talk about, feel free to contact us through the email address that you see at the upper part of the screen. That's info@unitedgkalliance.com. Once again, info@unitedgkalliance.com. That's it. Look forward to seeing you next time. Had a blast. Thank you.